Depending on when you're watching this, you're either 2 or 3 days away from another looming government shutdown in Washington, D.C. Welcome back to This Week in Mortgage, everybody. My name is Sam Battaglia, your mortgage broker. I hope you had a great weekend and that you're staying safe. The 10-year Treasury closed today with a 1.48 yield. That's up about 18 basis points from last Monday afternoon's close. It did indeed cross the 150 level today, which I think is a very big barrier, depending on which side of the coin you're looking at. And it did fall back below that, so it seems to have hit its head, and it's acting as a ceiling rather than a floor. Very similar activity today in the 30-year Treasury, which did cross 2, but fell slightly back below. I don't talk about the 30-year that much. You're going to see more central banks around the world, and governments for that matter, invest in the 30-year, as they've got to look to do some hedging for the next decade or two. And I look at the 30-year more for them, rather than the consumer side of things on the 10-year more for us. This is all on the heels of the Federal Reserve meeting last week. They did announce that they are going to start tapering purchases of treasuries and mortgage-backed securities. In my opinion, they are still in a pickle, and we'll get to that. This stock market right now seems to be as Goldilocks, quote-unquote, as it gets. Very low rates and a very accommodative monetary policy from the Federal Reserve, and decent earnings on there in Wall Street, which allows for a lot of stock buybacks for that matter. So I don't think for the stock market it gets much better than this. The Federal Reserve and inflation is something that we're going to want to look at. Now you have to understand, the Federal Reserve actually likes inflation when and if they can control it. That is actually their greatest tool, because every time we start seeing an economy slow down, the Fed just simply starts cutting interest rates to speed it back up. Right now, the only problem is the only place to go is negative. So they can't cut anymore, and I don't think they want to take things negative. So I really do think they are in a pickle. And they usually have the ability to use inflation as a tool, but right now they can't. And they actually like inflation on another note because it actually shows demand. But this, again, they like it as long as they can control it. Looks like this week another Chinese story makes our headlines on another Monday. Last week, it was the Chinese real estate company. This week, it's the Chinese power shortage. Now, I'm just making myself familiar with this, but I certainly hope that they don't start turning to coal or other old, dirty energy to power up. Now, as we know, 70% of the U.S. economy is consumer consumption, which means about 20% of the global economy is U.S. consumption. Now, if China literally can't keep their lights on and we don't make anything here anymore, how are we going to consume, and how is the economy going to stand on its own, and the world economy for that matter? Think about this. Now, in 2021, compared to just 10 years ago in 2011, it is so much easier for us as a consumer to actually do the consumption. And because of logistic things some companies have figured out, we can consume things within a 24-hour period that used to require plenty of energy and now no longer. What's going to happen here, if China can't make things, our consumption is going to turn back the clock 10, 20 years, meaning our economy is going to turn back the clock 10, 20 years. This is my idea to fix things. The U.S. government should start incentivizing businesses domestically to start producing goods domestically. At this point, the United States is essentially a service economy. I think we need to start turning into a manufacturing of goods economy. Now, I'll tell you, this right now, if we can't consume, because China literally can't keep their lights on because they don't have energy, or are going to have to go turn to coal or something for us to consume, that's not good. I will go as far as to say this has turned into a national security issue. If we don't start producing goods in this country, our economy is at stake, our livelihood is at stake, everything we know is at stake, because we cannot be so dependent. Besides, as we know, there's a lot of job openings. There's not a lot of jobs created because people don't want the jobs that are open. Now, I've never produced a good in my life. I would have no clue what a real supply chain looks like when you're manufacturing a good. But at this point, considering how hard it is to ship goods across the oceans, how hard it is to get goods made on the other side of the world, and now if those goods are getting harder to make and they're going to be slowed down because they literally don't have the energy to keep the lights on to make those goods, I'm going to say this is a national security issue, and the government should actually step in front of this and incentivize domestic businesses to produce domestically, because this is the only way we're going to be not reliant on other countries. Because if we wake up every week and we've got a headline from the other side of the world that doesn't affect anybody today and no one really knows what it means, but it's coming. So I think the government definitely has to get in front of it. As I've been talking about all year, jobs, inflation, supply chain, and now the latest shipping and delivery scarcity. Big jobs report next Friday. This Friday is the 1st of October. Usually we get our jobs report the 1st of each month. Because the 1st is on a Friday, this year it's on October 8th. So you're going to see markets for the next 2 weeks a little bit jittery ahead of that big jobs report that I think is going to dictate the economic stance, for that matter, for the rest of the year. And again, Thursday night, last day of September, government shutdown looming. Get ready for the grandstanding to begin. And when it comes to housing, mortgages never been as strong as they are right now. And right now, a home, and I've mentioned this before, has a lot more value than just a place to live. You also work there now, you also work out there now, and you can also teach your children there now because of this new world we're in. So I do see the values of homes, even though they shouldn't go up much more because then affordability will become an issue. I do see the value maintaining itself. I hope you enjoyed my segment this week in Mortgage, the Mortgage Minute. I hope you stay safe this week. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great week.